Yes, hello everybody and welcome back to the Wildcard Rewind. The season might be over, but we're still with you here. And for the next couple of weeks, we are going to go back and we're going to review every single division in the NFL, starting off with the NFC South.
I just want to rewind to when we were young and hard. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Yes. Hello. And for everyone watching, no, Paul Pickett has not miraculously grown head of hair. It is a very special guest we've got with us today. We've got one of the best one, actually, from the Wildcard Dynasty team. We got Ali here. We got the Dynasty Grill back on the show. And in fact, no, you're not back on, Ali, because you missed out the last time. Also, you did win the predictions, though, for the Super Bowl. So congratulations on that one. But welcome onto the show, Ali. How you doing, mate? Good to see you.
Yeah, I mean, I won with one correct prediction, which I'm going to take. Nobody else needs to know that. So yeah, I definitely won, and I'm definitely the best one of the trio. But yeah, really good. Thanks for having me on. We're starting the bar rather low, talking about the NFC South, but I'm here to throw a bit of shade on my team, the Buccaneers, perhaps. And yeah, can't wait for it. How are you guys?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, mate. I'm still just reveling in Chiefs victory, and we were saying before the show, I just get to talk about it until next season starts off, and I'll probably talk about it during next season anyway. So it's fantastic. I'm doing great, still riding on a high. Hannah, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, thanks. Missing football first weekend without it. Seemed a bit weird, didn't it? Now the season's over, but I'm kind of looking forward to next season now. So you'll shut up and we can stop talking about the Chiefs and their amazing success. But yeah, no, really excited to break down the NFC South today and obviously see what Ali thought and start with the bar quite low and move up to some of the best divisions in the AFC.
Some good AFC teams coming up later, but let's start off with your Tampa Bay Buccaneers then, Ali. Lots to say about this team. Did make the playoffs coming in, but still finished with an 8-9 record. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what went well, what needs to be addressed this offseason and in the draft maybe, and what kind of the future looks like for the Buccaneers. So we'll let you take it from there. Do you want to start with what went well?
This could be a rather quick segment, this one, but there was really not too much that went tremendously well for this team. It really didn't get off the ground. I mean, we're going to talk a lot longer about what didn't go right, but suppose the positives are that Tom Brady did come back, so we got to see another season of the GOAT in the Bucs uniform, and I mean he pulled off some miraculous comebacks throughout the season where it looked like we were dead and buried in the fourth quarter, but he never likes to lose. He always pulls it back for us. So yeah, that was a positive. Mike Evans obviously had another 1,000-yard season to put together his resume for a possible jacket. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, we made the playoffs. We scraped into the playoffs with that 8-9 record. Tom Brady's first losing record of his career, so he probably didn't want to end like that. But yeah, I mean, there's not too much went right apart from, I mean, it was such a poor division that we did make the playoffs almost by default, to be honest. But personally, I prefer if we didn't have made the playoffs because I knew we weren't going to do anything in the playoffs. So. But there's that, yeah. So not too many positives for Todd Bowles' first season as head coach of the team. But there's really not that many positives to talk about.
Hannah, is Ali being too harsh on his Bucs there? Hannah, what do you think? Any more positives you had in mind?
Not really. I mean, I think the problem is that with Tom Brady at the helm, you kind of come to expect that any team that he's kind of involved with is going to be successful. Yeah. And so I think because we had high expectations of the team, when they fall short, it actually feels even more disappointing. And I think there was just so much going on, wasn't there? His personal life wasn't as it had been. He was going through a divorce and that took up a lot of his time, I think. And he just couldn't concentrate on football, I don't think, well enough. I think the problem actually for them also was potentially losing Bruce Arians.
Yeah.
For some reason, like him and Leftwich just didn't seem to kind of bring the offense that we kind of expected from them. They seemed to look a bit stale. You know, they seemed to always want to run on the early downs, which everyone knew they were going to do, and they were never successful. And so they're getting in these, you know, third and long situations, and then Brady was having to pull them out of these. And there's only so much you can do, especially when like Godwin's recovering from knee surgery. You know, the O-line is basically paper. I think that it was all just too much for him ultimately. And I don't think, unfortunately, Leftwich helped him enough, you know, through these things. So it is really difficult to find positives. It really is. And it is a shame to see Brady go out that way. But I still think, and I suspect Ali might agree with me, that it was worth signing Brady in the end. You know, he still got them a ring, and he gave you, you know, all 3 years you're in the playoffs. Although, like you say, this year maybe didn't want to be. You know, so I still think it was worth it. I think as we come on to next season, they're going to be in a bit more of a challenging situation. But I think ultimately it probably was worth it, you know, to try and get as far as they could with Brady while they had him. So, not a great season, but, you know, I think ultimately probably worth it, you know, when you look back in the long run kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. And interesting question. I just kind of thought of this one off the cuff there, Ali. Do you think Tom Brady obviously spent 3 years at the Buccaneers? In those 3 years, is he not considered the greatest ever Buccaneers quarterback? Does he take in that throne? You think so?
Yeah, he does for me. I mean, I'd be building him a statue outside Raymond James. The fact that he retired as a Buccaneer as well. I know the Patriots wanted him to retire as a Patriot, as he spent all of his career pretty much at the Pats, and he didn't do that. He retired as a Buccaneer. So that's something. The fact that we've also, I think the stat still lives that we've never given a quarterback that we drafted a second contract in our history. Wow. We are terrible at drafting quarterbacks. The two Super Bowls we've won it with free agent quarterbacks. So yeah, he's easily for me the best quarterback that ever played for us. We've got a pretty pathetic past apart from that Super Bowl run back in 2003. So yeah, he's definitely the best easily in my eyes.
Oh, nice. And speaking about drafting quarterbacks, you're going to talk about what the Buccaneers need to do next year and what they need to improve on as well. So what kind of things do you think need to be top of the list? Is it getting that quarterback, or is there so much more that needs to be addressed?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think, as Hannah mentioned, it was 100% worth it to go all in with Tom Brady, because ultimately there's only one team that can win the Super Bowl for the season, and there's 31 teams that miss out. So to have won one Super Bowl in that time and to make the playoffs, it's been a magical run, to be honest. I can't fault it whatsoever. This season wasn't so enjoyable, but there was highlights. You know, the Germany game in Munich, that was a fantastic game against the Seahawks, really good spectacle, and we played really well. So unfortunately with that, we went all in with some big contracts. I think we owe Tom Brady something like $35 million still, which is still worth it, even though he's not going to be on the team. So I think we just have to absorb that cap hit finally, and just say this year's going to be a reset, and then we're going to go again in 2024. We've got some big free agents coming up, like who we need to re-sign on the defense, like Devin White. There's some free agents that we're obviously going to lose this offseason, which is going to be tough seeing them go, like Levante David, who's an absolute legend at Tampa Bay. But we just can't afford to keep them. We've got the second worst cap space situation going on. So there just needs to be a reset after the 3 years of just kicking the can down the road. Eventually, you've got to pay that bill. So we hopefully we're going to do it this season. We're not going to spend up on a quarterback. We're going to reset, get the team a lot younger, because we've got one of the oldest rosters, and then go again in 2024 with rebuilding.
My only question on that is, Ali, do you think that Bowles feels like he's a bit on the hot seat here after kind of how they, finish this season based on the expectations, do you think he's going to try and do something to save his job? Like if they tank this year, my suspicion is they'll get rid. I don't know even necessarily whether he was their first choice, because obviously Bruce Arians kind of did it in a way that he wanted Bowles to have that job. So I just wonder whether kind of he's going to try and do something to keep himself in that job rather than tanking. I don't know how much influence he's going to have. He might not be able to do that. They might say, look, this is where we're going to go. But I do think he is a little bit on the hot seat, really, and I'm interested to see kind of where this goes ultimately. Are they going to try and tank and just kind of push him out because they didn't really want him anyway? Or are they going to maybe support him a little bit and say, okay, we will give you X QB, we'll do it on a friendly deal in which that we can get rid of them next year if we want, and you can give yourself a go, and if it doesn't work, then we'll get rid of you. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think they're just going to tank and maybe look at getting rid of him at the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, for his point of view, he's never going to just say, right, I'm happy to tank and then you can kick me out at the end of next season. I think he obviously wants to save his job, but I think one telling sign is the organisation they've come out recently and said they're happy to absorb all of Tom Brady's cap hit for this year. So that tells you that they're probably not looking to move a lot of the cap into next year. We know the cap goes up every single season, so it's easy to keep moving money across. But I think they're saying they're happy for it to be absorbed this year, which gives you an indication that they know they're working with a really tight budget. We're, I think, like 50 million over the cap at the minute, and we've only got something like 20 odd players signed to the roster. So it's a pretty desperate situation. Having said that, you've still got some good players on that roster that won a Super Bowl ultimately. So they're not a million miles away. If they can get a half decent quarterback, they're not in the market for Derek Carr. I think he's going to be we're going to be priced out of a move. I think he'll go somewhere where a team have got plenty of cap space to give him that money. But you're looking like a bridge quarterback. It's going to be someone like a Baker Mayfield. It's going to be someone of that level that is not going to be a flash signing. But this division is still pretty poor. No matter what happens this offseason, there's not one team that's going to dominate. So I think he's going to have in the back of his mind that this is still a situation where we can get to 8 to 9 wins if we're lucky, and the division's still there for the taking. So we'll have to see how the season pans out. I think we're not going to be very active at all in free agency because of the fact we've got no money. We're going to have to see and wait for the dominoes to fall, wait for the scraps of the quarterback market. We've finally got our offensive coordinator in place from Seattle, so that's pretty good. He was someone that I did want him to sign for us, so there's that. But yeah, we're not going to do too much. It's going to be a tough situation, but obviously we're not just going to say we're going to tank. I mean, you can't sell tickets to the fans and say we're going to tank and win 2 or 3 games, so it's not going to happen. It might end up happening that way, but they're still going to try and win the division regardless.
Yeah, I think a real big sign will be, I've seen sort of rumors kind of swirling about Mike Evans potentially being traded. I think if that does happen, that's a pretty big indicator on what the Buccaneers are planning to do going into next season. The only other question I've got, Ali, before we go on to predictions would be, do you see a scenario where actually the Bucs go super aggressive and, try to trade up in this draft? Like, we know the Bears have got the number 1 pick. They're probably not going to take a quarterback. Do you see the Bucs being really aggressive and going, you know what, let's just go and let's get CJ Stroud or Bryce Young and just get our quarterback for the future, get that locked in right away? Or do you think they might sort of, like you said, kick the can down the road a little bit and see what happens?
Personally, I mean, unless there's a crazy change of plan, I don't see it happening. I'd much more I can see happening is we trade for, say, Justin Fields. If the rumors are true, which I don't think they're true at all, that the Bears are looking to shop him, then it's going to be a move like that. I can't see them trading up unless it's for someone like Anthony Richardson, who is probably destined for a pick number 8 to 12, something like that. If we can move up and get him, then I can see that happening. But I just see ultimately a bridge quarterback coming in to fight with Kyle Trask for that quarterback spot on the team. And it's it's not going to be great, especially after Tom Brady. I mean, how can you follow that up? But I don't see them going aggressively. I can't see it not now. I think we've had the 3 years of being all in, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
But right now we've got to pay the bill.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And let's have a little look at some predictions that we've got for Tampa Bay for next year. So I've got questions for both of you, and I'll answer them as well. It's, do you think Tampa Bay will improve on or get worse with their record of 8-9 from last year? And if you had to pick one player to be the Tampa Bay MVP for next season, who would it be? Let's go to you first, Hannah.
Well, I mean, as the roster stands, there's no way they're going to do better, are they? You know, they don't have a QB at the moment. I think, you know, as Ali has said, they don't really have the options to get anyone other than that mid-lower tier kind of free agent. So I just don't see them being able to improve on their record, unfortunately. They may do similar, but I think realistically it's unlikely to be better. So, you know, I'll say worse, although I wouldn't be surprised if they were 8-9 again, because they do still have some players. MVP-wise, I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say Rashad White on this one. You know, this offense is probably not going to be great, but Fournette's probably not going to be there, is he? Let's face it. So it's time for White to step up. And I think if he can step up, he's going to help any QB that, you know, ultimately goes there. And you never know, he might become their MVP.
Oh, I like that. Ali, what do you think?
Come on, Han, let's be a bit positive, shall we? No, I mean,
yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to even get close to 8 wins. I think probably 5 wins is probably where we're destined to be. I don't think we do any worse than 5, but I struggle to see how we're going to get up to 8 wins. If it wasn't for Tom Brady's heroics in the fourth quarter, we could have had 5 wins this season. So we're losing a lot of free agents, so it's only going to get worse from here.
Your only saving grace is that you're playing all the rest of your division twice, so that's potentially 6 wins, right?
Well, this is it. They're always really good close games between these, no matter what the record is. They're really tough teams to play against. But the fact that we won the division last year means we have the winners schedule from a lot of the other divisions as well, which really doesn't help us. So I'll predict 5 wins. In terms of my MVP, I'm going to go on the defense side. Can I do that?
Of course.
And I'm going to say Vita Vea is going to be the MVP of Tampa Bay next season. Someone that's going to have to step up. Is an absolute monster that gets double teamed all the time and still almost gets the quarterback. He's frustrating to watch because he always almost gets the quarterback. And he's just a massive unit. I think he's going to step up. They're going to give him a bit of help next year. And hopefully Todd Bowles is going to take control and he's going to build up the defense and then slowly build up the offense in 2024. So, Vita Vea is my MVP.
Vita Vea looks like a hilarious character you create on like one of the old like SmackDown versus Raw games where you like have like the thighs as big as possible and like everything as big as possible, and you just like look at that guy like that's not realistic, and then Vita Vea walks in the room and you're like, oh, actually, like he's just built like an absolute freak. Like what a player. I think we're 3 for 3 here. I think the Bucs will end up going a little bit worse on their 8-9 record. I think you're right. About 5-6 wins is probably about right, Ali. I'm going to go on the defensive side as well. I'm going to go Devin White. Like you said, he's a contract year this year. We see a lot of the times people on contract year really, really step it up and have a massive season. And Devin White, I think, will be doing that. And he's an unbelievably good player as well, which does help. So I'm going to go Devin White for the MVP for the Bucs next year. All right, let's move on then to the rest of the division, all who interestingly finished on 7-10. So we'll start off with the Saints. So Hannah, we're going to go to you. You're going to take the lead. Tell us what you think the Saints did well this year.
I think this is going to be a common theme with all of these teams.
Yeah,
there isn't a lot really that you can say. I think their season was really underwhelming. Although, to be fair, more than Tampa Bay, I was kind of expecting them not to be fabulous. Kind of when they pushed the chips in for Chris Olave, I thought it was quite interesting and kind of felt like they thought they were in a different place than necessarily I thought they were in terms of how competitive they were going to be this season. I just found them really difficult to watch, to be honest. Really difficult.
Yeah.
They were just not enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. I do think that there were some positives. So actually drafting Chris Olave, I think, was a real positive for them. He was a really great wide receiver, and I thought he really showed how kind of good he is. And I think he's going to be a really great kind of cornerstone piece on that team. And whoever their QB ends up being, he's going to be a massive asset. But I also think there was some other players, so like Rashid Shaheed, who was that, free agent. Well, he was an undrafted wide receiver. I thought he looked pretty promising. Obviously, they had issues in the wide receiver room because Michael Thomas went down really early. Jarvis Landry rarely played. Olave, unfortunately, had his own set of injuries. So they did have to have some of those kind of lower roster players step up, and I think Shaheed really kind of showed that he could potentially be a starter on the team. So I thought that was nice and promising for them. And they do still have a pretty good defense. We've always known the Saints for having this good defense, and they're actually 8th in defensive DVOA this season. So still really pretty good there. And I think their biggest issue, as we're going to talk about with all of these teams, was QB. Obviously, they started with Jameis, and it was looking okay, but he started to kind of slip into his old tendencies and didn't look after the ball very well. And then obviously he got injured. So I think they kind of used that as an excuse to bench him. And then when Andy Dalton was kind of okay, they made little effort to let him kind of come back in and give it a go. I just think they were really mediocre. And I think once they kind of realised they were mediocre, they didn't feel like they made much of an effort, really, even though they were in with a chance of potentially winning the division. I just didn't feel like they played like that. They just were like, meh, we're just going to poodle along and play. But on the whole, I'm sorry, I couldn't find many positives. As I say, there's a few little bits in there that, still I think were good from the season, but on the whole, didn't really think there were many positives. Ali, obviously, this kind of division better than probably Mags and I. What did you think on the Saints this season?
Personally, this is the team that I hate the most in the NFL. So to see them suffer with us this year was quite satisfying. There's a comment from Cam Jordan, who I think is a great player, but he came out to say that the Buccaneers are going to go back to being the Buccaneers now that Tom Brady's not playing for the team, which is quite juicy. But then if you think, ever since Drew Brees retired, their Pro Bowl quarterback, they've done absolutely nothing either. So they're just the old Saints. So yeah, that's quite funny. But yeah, there's not too much to add that you've already said, Hannah. You've summed up really well. And Chris Olave is an absolute star. I think had Garrett Wilson not had the season that he had, then a lot of people would be talking more about Chris Olave and sort of the Justin Jefferson rookie season, how amazing that he was on a team that he started with Jameis Winston and then he had Andy Dalton that came in. It was really quite an odd season for the quarterbacks for the team. I guess the Saints just thought that they could win with their defense, then have Andy Dalton not turn the ball over to help them win games pretty ugly, but it didn't really work. And Andy Dalton came in and absolutely slung it the first few games and was pretty good for fantasy and looked really quite good on the eye. It was like, hello, this is the old Andy Dalton coming back. But he quickly returned back to his old self. And I mean, it was just pretty much a bit of a disaster towards the end. Didn't look great. And it just surprised me that they just didn't get back to Jameis Winston at all. Didn't even try. I thought this offense needed a spark. They've got stars. They've got Alvin Kamara. They've got Chris Olave. They've got stars on that offense, but they needed something, a spark to get them going. And Andy Dalton's just not the one. So yeah, it was good to see him struggle. They certainly underwhelmed in that division. It was a division that was there for the taking for all four of these teams. And actually, towards the end of the season, they were looking close, but they faded away. I think they lost the game to the Falcons and maybe the Panthers as well. So not a great time for the Saints, who now are in an even worse situation than Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in that their can they're kicking down the road is even bigger. they're even more in a cap hole than what we are. So it's not a great time for the Saints. I think they could be the worst team in the division going forward because they need a big reset. Just for financial reasons, I don't think they can carry on as they are.
Saints are always in cap trouble. Like, as long as I've been watching the NFL, every year it's been like the Saints have to fix this cap problem, and they always get away with it. I don't know who they have as their accountant, but they're doing a phenomenal job because they never get caught out somehow. I don't know how. Of course, we forgot to mention Saints superstar wide receiver Kevin White as well, who's absolute stud, as we all know. So Hannah, that was, believe it or not, that was the good things about the Saints. So Hannah, what do you think that they need to work on going forward?
I feel like I'm being super harsh this evening, so I apologise to any fans out there. It's just unfortunate that this whole division did struggle a bit this season, isn't it? And hopefully next season we'll be talking a bit nicer about them, although we'll see how it goes. I think, again, as with every team that we're going to talk about tonight, they need an upgrade in the QB room. They actually, I don't even know if they have a QB on the roster next season. If you can you count Taysom Hill as a... No, that's a lie. Jameis Winston, I think, still is in contract, isn't he? But they're going to get rid of him. I mean, there's no way they're going to keep him if they're not going to put him on the field when Andy Dalton's kind of being there. I can't see them wanting to carry on with him this season. And then obviously Andy Dalton's a free agent. So, they're going to be looking. I've already heard that Derek Carr did go for a visit before he got released. And obviously they got that first round pick from the Peyton trade. So I think they're in a better position than they were a few weeks ago before they had that first round pick. But they're not in any place within this draft to be able to get a QB in the first round anyway, for sure. And I can't imagine they've got enough capital to be able to move up far enough to be able to get a QB. So I think they're going to be in the free agent market as well. Obviously, their best option is going to be Derek Carr. Yeah. But whether they can, make it work with the cap, I just don't know. I actually really don't know what they're going to end up doing at QB. Ultimately they'll bring a free agent, but who that's going to be, I'm not sure. The O-line, actually, which previously or has historically been actually quite one of their strengths, wasn't particularly good this season, and I think they do need to do a little bit of work on it now. So this season they actually had 9 different starters that played at least 100 snaps on the O-line. Most of them had a below average PFF grade. So they need to sort that out a little bit more. So I think they need to do that as well. And obviously, as we've said before, they're in cap hell as always. So they need to do some sorting out of that. I assume they're going to restructure many contracts to try and get back into, or under the cap. But again, then ultimately that just means they're kicking the can further down the road again. I kind of got it when they had Drew Brees and it was, they were competitive and potentially they could go and, play for that ring. But I actually don't see the point of them really doing that now. I kind of agree that they probably just need to reset. Just say, look, this is going to be a last season. Let's reset. Let's sort out, some of our cap stuff. Let's then start fresh. I don't think they're going to do that because I think they think that they're still competitive, and obviously they do have pieces for sure. But I just don't see the point of them kicking the can down the road at the moment. There's nothing. They're not competing for anything. It just seems like a waste to me. But that's them, not me. And then obviously their other issue is that there's a potential Alvin Kamara suspension on the horizon. So what are they going to do in that running back room? So Mark Ingram is actually going to be a free agent and potentially retire this season. So who else do they really have in that room that does to do anything for them? They need to sort that out as well. Draft a running back or find someone somewhere, because I'm not really convinced that Kamara's going to play all season. So they've actually got loads of work to do, to be honest. And again, I'm not feeling totally confident for their 23 season, but we'll see. They've worked their magic before, so let's see what we may be talking about them a bit differently by the beginning of the season, depending on what moves they've done in the off season.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got lots of weird contracts as well. Like they've got, I don't know if the correct term is like ghost years, but they've got like players on 5-year contracts that they've agreed to pay for 7 years technically. Like they tack on extra years on the end of it. It's all very confusing. I don't know how they're even allowed to do it, but they seem to make it work. And you're right, Hannah. They just never believe they're not contending. I think they'll just keep doing more of the same, and they'll just keep pushing because that's historically what they've done. So we'll have to wait and see what will happen. It might just all blow up on their face though. So let's move on to our predictions then for the Saints. Then, do you think that they will improve or do worse on their 7-10 record from last year? And who is their MVP for next season? Let's go to you first, Ali, on this one.
So 7-10 is I guess it's fairly realistic for them to get back to 7-10. 7-10 is well outside the playoffs. I think if they get close to 7 or 8 wins, I think they'd see that as a good season for the Saints. Yeah. I mean, they won't like it, but just where they are realistically, I'll predict less than 7 wins. There's not many teams that will get less than 7 wins, so I think they'll be fairly close because they'll get 2 or 3 wins in the division. So they've only got to find 2 or 3 more wins to get close to that 7. So I'll say less than 7 wins. And my MVP is going to be Chris Olave. Just, I mean, what he managed to do with very limited quarterback play was just astonishing. The fact that Michael Thomas is an absolute big baby and was out with a broken toe all season. He's been out forever now, and he won't come back and plan that massive contract that he's got. I think Chris Olave just took it upon himself, and I mean, he really surprised me because I didn't think he could be this alpha type wide receiver. I thought that he needed someone opposite him to really take a lot of the heat away and really thrive. But he done it pretty much. He was the offense going forward. So yeah, I think it's gonna take an even bigger step next season. Hopefully they sort out their quarterback situation, get one of these free agents in. I can't see them making a big splash. I can't see a Derek Carr coming now that he can choose where he's going to go. Yeah, so I'll go Chris Olave because I think he's quarterback proof, and I think he'll take another step. Yeah,
sounds good to me. Hannah, what do you think?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm going to be a bit boring and be very similar to Ali. They've got so much work to do. Kamara's probably going to be out some of the year. I can't see them, getting many wins over 7, if any. So I agree that I think they're probably going to get fewer wins. And I'm going to agree with him with the MVP as well and go with Chris Olave because he really did show out last season. And I think he's probably only going to get better. Let's just hope a QB is going to come in to support him and make him, even better.
Yeah, I'm going to go. They're going to get more. I think they're going to improve their record, maybe by 1, not a lot more. Like I just think, you're right. They're going to have to play a lot of these teams in the division, and I think the Bucs are going to be significantly weaker without Tom Brady. I know the Saints turn up and beat the Bucs most times anyway, just by like voodoo that they have over the Bucs. But I think, the Saints will just get maybe to 8 wins here, just because they're annoying, right? I can see why you don't like them, Ali. They kind of just figure things out sometimes, and they're like, "How are you even doing that?" Yeah, they just seem to always find a way through, working cap magic or really figuring things out on the defensive side of the ball. I think they'll just sneak to maybe 8 wins, but not too much more. I don't think they'll get to the playoffs unless they happen to do a Bucs from this year and win the division with like a losing record. But we'll have to wait and see. I think the MVP for them could end up being Marshall Lattimore, your friend Mike Evans' favorite player. I just think he's maybe the most talented player on that team. I think he's a real difference maker. So if he has an MVP season for them, then they've got a good chance of getting more wins there. So I'll go with Lattimore and a slight uptick on 7 wins. And let's move on to the Falcons. I'll take the lead on the Falcons here and what they've done well and what they need to improve on, and I'll pitch it to you guys to see what you think. So I think, they finished 7-10, just like the Saints. I thought Drake London coming in, that was a good pick for them. He had a solid first year, kind of what you said about Chris Olave, Ali, like, Olave and Wilson kind of stole the limelight a little bit, but But Jake London had a quietly, quite a good season, especially considering he had a quarterback who didn't know how to throwing him the ball. And they were historically low on throw attempts this year, the Falcons were. So I think, London did very well with, the scraps that he was given. I still think, people are maybe downing him a little bit, but I still think Kyle Pitts is an absolute elite option at tight end if used correctly. That is a huge caveat for them. I think if they can get him more involved in the game, then he's dangerous and teams are not going to want to play against him. He's a matchup nightmare. They ran the ball extremely well. They're the third highest rush yards in the NFL this year. Again, that's maybe to do with the fact that they didn't really throw the ball. So they did run it a lot. I don't know if any team ran the ball more than them this year. I don't think so. So that is still, a tick in the positive box for them, the third highest in the NFL. I just feel like I was looking through the team and I was like, they've got a piece here and there that you're like, oh, that's quite good. It's like, oh, they've got one guard that's quite good with Lindstrom, and they've got one tackle that's quite good with Matthews. They got one wide receiver that's quite good, London. They got one D line that's quite good, Grady Jarrett, and they got one cornerback that's quite good with AJ Terrell. It's like they've got little pieces of the puzzle, and it's like all of a sudden, if they can put two of those together and have two really good cornerbacks or two really good wide receivers, then you're dealing with another team here. And the good thing about them is they got 2 extra picks in 2023 that they can use to try and, get that sort of sorted out. Like they could use that pick to sort out a brand new cornerback to go with AJ Terrell or another defensive line or a wide receiver. So I think they're almost there, but we talked about it at the start of the show. They don't have a quarterback. Like Desmond Ridder come in. I don't know. I didn't see too much from Desmond Ridder. So it's going to be really interesting what they do in the draft. But I feel like they're a team that's like almost there. What do you think, Hannah?
Yeah, do you know what? Actually, although I've been very depressing about all of the teams so far, I actually thought, although, 7-10 is not the best record, they actually did much better than I thought they would this season. And I actually really enjoyed watching them because I felt like although the roster wasn't the best, I thought that the coaching staff actually coached or schemed them to show or do what the players did best. So they actually did much better than I expected them to. And I really enjoyed watching them. So although it was a negative in that they weren't that great in terms of record, I thought that it was really promising in terms of coaching and for the future.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think they're on the up and up. Ali, what do you think about the positives from them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive for the Falcons. As much as I don't want to admit it, I think they're going to be fighting it out with perhaps the team we're next going to talk about for the lead in the division next season. As much as I really don't want to talk about it, but it is. There's a lot more positive for the Falcons. They've got great cap space. They've got a decent young team now. Arthur Smith, you have to love what he's doing. He was the guy who was mentoring Derrick Henry when he was smashing all the yardage records, and he just likes to run the ball down your throat. Even when the team is behind, they just run the ball. It's either Tyler Algier or Cordarrelle Patterson, 2 fairly decent running backs, and they just ram it down your throat. And even when you want them to pass the ball, it's like Kyle Pitts is open in the end zone. It's like just throw to him or Drake London. These 2 massive receiving targets, but no, they just try and punch it in. And but personally, I think Hannah said the Falcons are quite entertaining to watch. They've got some decent pieces that they can build around. I think that I'd quite like Arthur Smith as a head coach. I think that the future is definitely positive for the Falcons going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And just some things I thought they could maybe address going forward next season. I think, they absolutely need, like, they've maybe got the biggest quarterback need, like maybe the Bucs, I suppose. But Desmond Ridder for me, I'd be happier having Jameis Winston as my starting quarterback than Desmond Ridder. So I think they really need to figure something out there at quarterback. I would love to see them. They've got pick number 7 in this draft. I think they could go 2 ways here. They could go sign that second lockdown corner with Gonzalez. I think he's maybe the top prospected corner in the draft coming up. Or they could just continue. They've kind of been sneakily building this kind of basketball team, which is odd for a team that doesn't pass the ball. But they've got like Kyle Pitts, they got Drake London. They tried Brian Edwards last year, kind of similar big guy. I'm like, do they go out and like get like a Quentin Johnson at 7, just this absolute unit, and just continue building that? But again, then you need a quarterback that can push the ball down the field. Heck, maybe even, dare I say, Baker Mayfield, right? That might be the perfect guy to sling the ball down the field for them. That'll be interesting. Or do they address things later at wide receiver and go another way and go with like a Parker Washington or someone that's a bit more crafty and, you know, a bit more slippery? But I think the ultimate thing they need to do, and it's the same for, I think, the next team we're going to talk about, they need to scare teams a bit more. No one's afraid to fight the Falcons right now. They don't have any scary players. But if they can do something like have AJ Terrell and Gonzalez at cornerback, teams are going to be more afraid of chucking the ball deep against them. So they need to scare teams a little bit more moving forward. And they've got a couple of draft picks to address that. So we'll see how they get on. And we'll make some predictions about them. I'll go first for this one then. I think they might end up, you know, sadly, even though we've talked them up a lot, I actually think they might end up doing a little bit worse. Mainly because they're going to get a new quarterback in. I think they may try to like run or throw the ball a little bit more. It might backfire. They might end up looking like a better team, but losing more games. Kind of what the Lions were like 2 years ago, where they were still kind of getting things sorted out. So I wouldn't be shocked to see them stay the same or go down a little bit. And for MVP, I'm just going to go Kyle Pitts. We have to see a big season from Kyle Pitts, or people are going to be really, really afraid. So I'd love, this is more coming from me wanting to see it, but I'd love to see Kyle Pitts be the MVP for them this year. Ali, what are you thinking for your predictions?
So I'm going to be quite aggressive now, and I think the Falcons are going to try and make a splash, and they're going to try and persuade Lamar Jackson out of Baltimore and be their quarterback. I think the system is perfect for Atlanta. The running, they just want to run the ball down your throat, and he's got some weapons there. So if they can persuade Lamar Jackson to come to Atlanta, I think that would be absolutely perfect. They've got loads of cap space, and yeah, that would just be tremendous. So with that in mind, I think they are going to try and make a splash. So 7-10, I think they're going to beat that. I think they're going to be a 9 or 10 win team. I don't think they're going to be a perfect team and win too many games, but 10 and on that border of making the playoffs would be my prediction. And with a quarterback upgrade, I'm going to say Drake London is going to take another step forward. I think he came into the NFL and he was a top 8 pick last season. Well, I think he was the first wide receiver taken in the draft.
He was
my rookie wide receiver 1. And he started off absolutely on fire. His stats the first 3 or 4 weeks were unreal, like the best we've ever seen from a rookie wide receiver, but then faded away. And yeah, not many people are talking about him. So I think he's going to take a big step with a quarterback upgrade.
Nice. Hannah, what are you thinking?
Well, had Ali not said about Lamar Jackson, it was something that I was going to mention. It's just something that I've heard, you know, in the NFL kind of grapevine, that he would be, and when you actually think about it, he would be an amazing fit. And I want him out of the AFC North. So I think this is absolutely perfect. And this is what they, you know, should do. I'm really intrigued. Again, we're not talking about Baltimore. We're talking about the NFC South. But I don't think that they're going to get anything done, and I do think potentially they might tag the trade. I just don't think I can't see them getting close, because I don't think they want to do fully guaranteed, and I think he wants fully guaranteed. So I can't see where they're going to meet in the middle, if I'm honest. So I think ultimately they might, although they don't want to, I think they might have to move on from him. And I think Atlanta would be an amazing landing spot. And then I would actually enjoy watching Lamar, because I don't enjoy watching him because he's in the same division as me. So he can go and be in the NFC and I can enjoy watching him. So I think that would be awesome. And I think, you know, it would be the perfect scheme for fit for him. They do need to make some moves on defense, really, you know, to be that rounded team, to be able to do anything kind of ultimately in the playoffs. But I'm going to take a punt and say I'm going to say over as well, 7 wins. I'm going to hope that Lamar moves on from Baltimore. And I'm going to look elsewhere maybe and say Tyler Algier did pretty well this season, and maybe this is his opportunity to take a bit more of a step. and become kind of their lead running back next to Lamar. So I'm going to say Tyler Algier, but ultimately, if Lamar goes, we all know he's going to be MVP of the team, but he's not there yet. So I'll say Algier.
I love that. Imagine Lamar Jackson, then Kyle Pitts becomes his like Mark Andrews at tie up. Wow, that is awesome. I would love to see that.
It all fits, right?
Mhm.
It all fits perfectly. I would love to see that. And yeah, Lamar would look good in that uniform as well, right? Running around. It's you can visualize it, right? You can see it. So yeah, I think that'll be a fantastic move for them. And like we've talked about, this division's here for the taking. If they get Lamar Jackson, all of a sudden they have to be the favorites to win the division. They have to be, because they've got a quarterback and no one else does. So yeah, I would love to see that happen for them.
I think they're pretty good on the cap, aren't they, this year now? Because they went through all the cap hell last year. So maybe they can also make some moves for their defense and, shore up that side too. And who knows what could happen.
Ooh, exciting times for the Falcons. Absolutely. And we'll move on to our last team then. It's the Carolina Panthers, who also finished on 7-10. And, some good things about them. I mean, they almost did too well at the end of last year. I mean, Steve Wills came in as an interim coach, and he did great. He almost won them too many games. They looked an absolute lock for a top 5 pick in the draft, and he kept winning games. And they almost made the play that kept there was 3 weeks to go, and people were still talking about the Panthers being able to make the playoffs. And I was like, how on earth is this team going to get into the playoffs? But yeah, they did really, really well. But unfortunately for them, now they've got worse picks, and I mean, maybe a worse head coach as well. That Frank Reich's come in, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But they do have, some really good players. They got DJ Moore, they've got Chin and Burns and Luvu. They've got. I thought they made a really, really smart decision though to trade their best player, Christian McCaffrey, because now this year coming up, they'll have 4 picks inside the top 100 picks, so they should get some really, really good players, especially with that 9th overall pick that they've got. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with that. You would assume quarterback. They've been trying to figure out this quarterback problem since Cam Newton left, really. But I think they're maybe done with trying to bring in a Sam Darnold or a Baker Mayfield or some of these other guys. I think they might try and draft their guy. But then again, Frank Reich might just decide to bring in Carson Wentz because that seems to be his favorite thing to do. So not really sure what they're going to do to address that quarterback position. There are some good players. They have a lot of draft picks. But I don't know, something about Frank Reich just left a bad taste in my mouth after his run the Colts. But there are promising signs. So I think, Hannah, you and Ali are a little bit higher on the Panthers than me. So Hannah, we'll go to you first. What do you think about the Panthers? What they did well last year?
Yeah, I actually, again, at the beginning of the season, I was a bit like, oh, this is a disaster. They're a disaster team. But I think as soon as Steve Wilkes took over, I just thought they look much more promising. Like, we know they have pieces already on the team. And I just think that he kind of showed that they do have more potential than they were showing. So I think when they got rid of CMC, everyone was like, oh, they're going to be even worse now, even worse. But I thought, Foreman and Hubbard did a great job of kind of being this 2-headed monster and, showing how well they can run. And I think the team play hard, and I thought they look great. And I thought they were really in with a chance of beating the Bucs and going into the playoffs, ultimately. Yeah. So I thought they actually did a really good job of actually showing, look, we have some decent talent here. And we are a promising team. We just need a few more pieces in there and the right coaching staff. And I think, they are potentially, looking to be contenders soon-ish. So I just thought that they showed good signs. We knew that this season probably wasn't going to be the best, based on who was there at QB and etc. But I think it's actually been a reasonable season for them, just showing how promising potentially they could be moving forward.
Yeah. Ali, what do you think about the positives for the Panthers?
Yeah, I mean they done extremely well. I like what they're doing, and they're building up from their defense, and their defense has got some really great young playmakers like the Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin. they've got some really, really good players. I mean, halfway through the season, it was a fire sale. They were all on the block, but then they came out and said they're not going to trade any of their young defensive pieces, which I really liked. That's how they're going to build the team. And we know they've got some decent players on offense, like the DJ Moores, people like that. And the two running backs really took the mantle on pretty well from Christian McCaffrey. The trade was one of them. You can't often say that it was a win-win for both teams, but it was a trade that really suited both teams. So yeah, going forward, they're, I mean, pretty much like every team in this division, they're looking for that quarterback. But I suppose they're the opposite of what the Falcons are, because the Falcons' defense is pretty pathetic, whereas the Panthers have a really strong defense. So they're looking for playmakers on offense, really, to take them forward. So I personally think they're going to, as you said, they're going to go via the draft for their quarterback. I think Anthony Richardson has been mocked to Carolina Panthers in nearly all of the mocks that I'm seeing right now, which would be pretty interesting for them going forward. I think they'd need a bridge quarterback because I don't think he can start straight away. So whether they stick with Sam Darnold or go for someone a bit safer to be that bridge for the next few years. But certainly this is a team moving in the right direction. And what they showed at the back end of last season was that they're not just a team that wanted to tank. They actually really wanted to play for their coach. And I think a lot of the players wanted Steve Wilkes to be the head coach, but it wasn't to be. I do think Frank Reich is a really good head coach. So I think that's a decent style. And I think he can do a lot with that team.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I can't figure. Couldn't quite figure them out when I was trying to do the notes for it. But Hannah, you've got a few things you think they could improve on, or some things they definitely need to look at going forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, we've covered some of it already, discussing kind of last year. Again, as with all the teams, they need that QB, don't they? You know, at the moment, the only QB they have on the roster is Matt Corral, who is certainly not going to take them to the promised land. So we know, and I think everyone in the league knows, that they're searching for that QB. I think it's highly, highly likely that will come in the draft rather than via a free agent, although they may sign, you know, they may draft someone and then sign one of these free agents just as a bit of a bridge while the rookie settles in. But I think realistically their QB of the future is going to come in the draft, and I think this is the time that they're going to do it. Who it's going to be, interesting to see. They may be able to stay where they are. They may have to move up. It's going to be so interesting in the top of the draft this season. You know, with all these QBs, people, you know, teams desperate, as we've seen, this whole division needs a QB. You know, there's so many teams that need a QB, not all, you know, going to be able to get one, but it's just going to be so much fun. I reckon there's going to be so much movement. It's going to be great. But, you know, said before, they do have some awesome pieces, which is, you know, really great. I think they've got a great foundation there. They just need to do a few extra bits to kind of bring that all together. And I think one of those things is shoring up that running back room. So Foreman is actually going to be a free agent now this season. So they either need to re-sign him or potentially draft someone. I don't think Hubbard was able to show when CMC was out, you know, not last season, the season before, that he's really suitable for a lead back role. I think they either need a two-headed monster or they need to find someone else for their lead back. So I think running back room is probably one of the things they need to have a look at. But I am really excited to see where this team is going to go. Like, I do think ultimately Frank Reich is a good coach, a good head coach. I think he ended up in a bit more of a difficult situation there, you know, at the Colts at the end. And he's like building this superstar coaching staff. So I think if they find the QB, I think, to me, this is going to be the best team in this division in the short term, if they can just find that QB, because they've got so many pieces in place to really start kind of competing on, and they're young. So I think ultimately, you know, they can start to kind of build for the next few years.
We're very excited. We're going to differ on this, I think, then. We're going to go do our predictions. Ali, we'll start with you. Do you think they'll improve then on their 7-10 record? And who do you think is going to be their MVP?
Yeah, so I'm going to say they are going to just better their record of 7-10, perhaps 8 or 9 wins. I don't see them getting really into double digits unless they make a splash at quarterback. I mean, they could trade up in the draft to get a CJ Stroud or a Will Levis, someone like that. But I can't see I can't see anyone outside of Bryce Young being someone that can come in straight away and just take a team into the playoffs. So for me, I think it's not going to be all plain sailing for the Panthers, who I think will be probably the best roster all said and done in this division. I just think that it will be perhaps 2024 when they look to push on with that quarterback that they draft this year, whether it's Anthony Richardson or someone a bit higher if they trade up. So I'm going to say that they do better that record, just because I think the Bucs and the Saints are going to suck. So I think the Panthers are going to win against them teams, and just be probably fighting for the lead with the Falcons. So I'm going to say that they just better the record. And MVP, I mean, it's got to be the monster Brian Burns for me. He's just an absolute wrecking ball on that defense. That they had plenty of trade offers for Brian Burns, but they turned them all down. And someone that they want to build their franchise around. And you have to say that that's well played, because Brian Burns is someone that you can build your future around, and someone that I love to watch. Is an absolute monster.
Agreed. Hannah, what do you think?
So I think because they're going to be bringing in that rookie, I think potentially they are going to be worse this season in terms of their record, because there is going to be teething issues. I think that defense is great, but I think with a rookie, they're not always best at protecting the ball. So I'm going to actually say their record is going to be slightly worse. But I mean, I'm also going to say Brian Burns is going to be their MVP. We may all agree on this, but he is a beast, isn't he? And we know that their defense is their major strength at the moment. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, we're 3 for 3 on Brian Burns there. I think he's just he's the best player on that team, right? I think that's pretty clear to see. And I'm going to go out on a limb. I think they're going to do much worse, just because the old saying was obviously defense wins championships. But that's back whenever it was the Bill Belichick era. Now we're in the Andy Reid era, and offense really, really wins you games. I just don't think that they have enough firepower. I just don't see how they're going to put up the points to win games. They don't have a quarterback. If they do get one, it could be someone like Anthony Richardson, and that could be an absolute disaster because of the way he plays, or it could be amazing. They have DJ Moore, who's a good wide receiver, but on the whole probably a little bit overrated in general. I just don't see where they're going to get the points from. Like you said, Hannah, they don't have any top-tier running backs. The defense might be really, really good, but they still have to, put points on the board. So I think that could be what undoes them. But I do like their future, like we kind of said, 2024, 2025. I just think it's smart building from the back, but I think they might have to take one step backwards to take 2 steps forwards, if that makes any sense. So I think next year they might end up being pretty bad, but I don't think anyone's going to want to play against that defense. Like that's a scary, scary team, and like you said, they're really young. So I think the future is bright for them, but next year might be just a little blip for them going forward. And guys, that's all 4 teams covered. We started with the best division, Ali, isn't that right?
It may have been in years past, but it certainly wasn't this year.
No. But yeah, exciting times ahead for a lot of these teams, and can't wait to see where some of these teams end up with their quarterbacks going forward. So, Ali, mate, thank you so much for coming on and previewing the next year for your Bucs and the other teams in this division. And Hannah, pleasure as always chatting to you guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you're not already, make sure you're following us on Twitter at the Wildcard Rewind, and make sure you follow the Fantasy Wildcard meme page as well. But until next week, we will see you later. Bye.
Taking back to the start.